Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into another edition of PTN Extra. I'm Evan Kamiko, as always, joined by Mike Irwin. Mike, here we go. It's LSU week. We're a week off the bye. We'll talk some basketball coming up later in the show, but let's start with what everybody wants to know and what everyone cares about, Arkansas and LSU on the football field. Mike, when you look at this matchup, what are your initial thoughts on it?
Well, let's start with some good news, because if you look at what Travis Williams did and what he accomplished without an open date against Tennessee, where he changed the defense up to the point where they talked about it after the game, how there were all these confusing looks. And it happened because of the way Arkansas is constructed. They've got all these hybrid linebacker safeties, and they can move guys around. They can have a three-man front, a four-man front. They can have three linebackers. They can have 5 defensive backs, 6 defensive backs. So he's adjusting based on what he thinks is going to happen. Are they going to throw? Are they going to run? Whatever. So he did all that in 1 week. Now he's had an open date week to get get prepared for LSU. And LSU is a little more one-dimensional than Tennessee. They don't run the ball as well. It's more about passing. So there's that. The bad news is you're going up against not a freshman quarterback, not a redshirt. Arkansas's had good luck with these freshmen redshirt, rattling them. And it was suggested, it's been suggested that you kind of have to change your strategy when you, and it's not like Nussmeier has a whole lot of game experience, but he's older and you can just watch him be more mature. He makes fewer mistakes. Now, he makes mistakes, but especially against Ole Miss, he did things you didn't think he could do. He's not supposed to be very mobile, but there was a play where he was sacked for like a 15-yard loss, and then he escaped and turned it in about a 25-yard gain. So I think trying to rattle this guy is going to be a little more difficult than it was against Tennessee. It's going to be a chess match, a battle. Then you get into this whole Talon Green thing, which we still don't know what exactly is going on. We know he's worked out every time they've had a workout since the open date week started, and into this week he has worked out. But Sam Pittman finally revealed on the SEC teleconference that he's not full speed, and he hopes he will be by Saturday. Well, if you're not full speed and they're pressuring you, you've just taken away about 80% of what he makes him who he is.
Right.
So you try to picture what he would be like not mobile. Well, what it means is he's going to have to stand in that pocket and get rid of the ball quicker, and they may be working on that. I don't know, but that is an issue, and we'll see how that works out. And then there's this whole thing of if he's got an issue and they do come at him, and LSU leads the SEC in sacks and is number 4 in the nation. They've got great defensive ends, and their linebackers are very active. What are the chances that he gets hurt again? Maybe not, season-ending injury, but if you've got a little problem down there and you get it bumped again, what are the chances of Malachi Singleton having to come into the game? And I would say it's a real possibility at some point. The only good news on that is he's already done that.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's going to come in cold, but it's still not something you want to happen.
We'll get to Talon, we'll get to the offensive line, we'll look in the trenches in just a moment, but I want to go back to your initial point when talking about the Arkansas secondary and Garrett Nussmeier. When you look at the 2021 quarterbacks in the SEC who have played, Nussmeier is 19th in the league. He's thrown 6 interceptions. That's, 1 or 2 above Talon Green. But then you look at this Arkansas secondary. We questioned earlier in the season, were they going to get the turnovers and the interceptions they need? When you look at now their total defense, they're 9th in the SEC, 320 yards per game, but they're getting more interceptions. 6 interceptions now has the Arkansas defense got. So to your point there, Nussmeier is going to make mistakes in this game. It's no question. It's going to come down to turnovers and field possession, really, and kind of special teams. But to your point, Mike, I really like that when you look at that, it's like, Arkansas, they're trending in the right direction when it comes to interceptions. And Nussmeier, that's where he's most inefficient at.
Except he's trending in the right direction, too, because he's looking better.
Yeah.
He certainly did in the Ole Miss game. Didn't make nearly the mistakes that we've seen before. So which one of those things is going to be proved to be true in this game? Is he going to make mistakes, or are they going to come and get even better and get more turnovers and get more sacks? Because they are increasing the number of sacks. For a long time, it's like these guys can't sack anybody.
Yeah.
Now they've been getting sacks. Now they've been forcing fumbles. Now they've been forcing interceptions, So it's just a kind of a guessing game as to what's going to happen.
Yeah, a little bit of a cat and mouse back and forth. And to your point on sacks, we know the Arkansas defense has been getting more sacks and getting more pressure, but it's an LSU team that's number one in the league when it comes to sacks allowed. They've only allowed 2 all season. So Nussmeier's not facing a lot of pressure, or maybe he's just getting the ball out really quick, and I think he's doing a really good job of both. But to you, what's going to be the real difference in the trenches? Is it going to be Arkansas's offensive line or Arkansas's defensive line?
I think it's both, but offensive line is huge. I think that may be the bigger deal. I mean, they've gotten criticized probably unfairly because every single game, the strategy of the opponent is what? Blitz. And that's hard for an offensive line to deal with. When you do that all the time, it makes you look worse than you probably really are. But I keep thinking one of these games they're going to play somebody that doesn't do that. And then you'll see this offensive line is a lot better than you think it is. But they are getting better themselves. I mean, they've had. This is the thing that you have to. When you go back and I watched a replay of this game, I watched replays of all the games. And when you watch the replay, you see things you didn't see before. And what I've noticed is when they give up something, they always come back and do something. It's not like they get dominated. It's kind of like punch, counterpoint, pow, I got hit, now I'm going to hit you, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, and to your point as well, I think, again, when we look at the offensive line, they're in a really good spot. They were able to, Tennessee defense for a while got what they wanted with the Arkansas line. And something interesting about the offensive line for Arkansas, too, is we saw a lot of Emarion Harris against Tennessee and not so much of Keyshawn Blackstock, which is what, one of our analysts in DJ Williams was saying has been a problem for Arkansas. And we saw Harris do a really good job of limiting that defensive front, James Pierce Jr. and the rest of the Tennessee D line. But I think, you listen to Fernando Carmona Jr. talk about how, this is a big confidence boost that Tennessee was, and the fact that they were able to go and help out their guys in Malachi Singleton, drive down the field and score that touchdown to win the game at the end of it. Now, did Tennessee's defense let them walk in? That's a conversation for a different time. But it's still impressive enough to see the offensive line be able to move that Tennessee defense and set up Arkansas with a chance to win the game.
Well, again, that's one of the big questions. Do you gain tremendous confidence from what you did against Tennessee? Do you come out even better? Is that the thing that's been holding them back and now they're going to look really good? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to do what some teams do and you have a big win and then you have a layoff, which is what really hurt Tennessee, and then you lose a little momentum? And there are a lot of fans that are worried about that. They don't like the fact that Arkansas didn't play. Well, they had to have a week off. There's no question that was something that will benefit them physically. But now we have to wonder, did they sit around for an extra week thinking about how good they are and then all of a sudden they're not?
Yeah.
This is what I love about college football. It's just so unpredictable.
Yeah, and we could have that whole conversation, right? Like Arkansas, when you look 3 weeks from now, they're going to have another bye week. And who do they play after that bye week? Your favorite team in the Texas Longhorns. It's like you don't really get a break. You don't get a time off, or at least a good time off, especially when you get these byes. But they do give you an ability to rest players, get healthy. We know Jalen Braxton's questionable. Hudson Clark will probably be back. But to you, what do you need to see out of Taylon Green this week if he plays that will really make an impact in the game?
Well, I hope he's mobile. Yeah. But if he's not, then I want to see him make quicker decisions. And instead of these situations where he takes the snap and he's got somebody open immediately and he looks at him and goes, I'll throw over here. You want to see him more inclined to go with his first option, which is there. Get rid of the ball quicker. This is part of the maturation process that Bobby Petrino's trying to put him through. And you can see him struggling, but you can also see how badly he wants to do it. And, it's not one of these defiant things where he gets mad when you see him on the sidelines getting chewed out, Yeah. He's got this look on his face. Yeah, I know I screwed up. I gotta do better. I got to do better.
Yeah, in Arkansas right now, they're sitting 4-2. Let's take a look at the season as a whole as we're about halfway through the season, 4-2, 11, 12, 13 games or so. What's impressed you the most about this team this year?
What's impressed me is, unlike a lot of the fans, they have ditched last year. And I don't say all fans have done this, but a lot of these people that wanted Sam Pittman gone and have done nothing but talk about that since last December, what they did was they took last year's team and just put it on the backs of this year's team. And this is a completely different team. And it's an ignorant approach because you don't know football if you do that. That's like saying Florida is what they were last year. Florida is better. Vanderbilt is better. every year a team is different. Well, this team is different, and they have believed in themselves, even though they had some mistakes, and the Oklahoma State game, I think, hurt a lot in the fans' mind, but I don't think it hurt them as bad because they recovered from that. And I think they recovered from a very disappointing loss to A&M, which they felt like they could have won that game. That could have sent them backwards. And instead, they came home. And remember all this stuff about they don't play well at home? Oh, this team that plays well on the road, they don't play in front of their own fans. Well, that's not true either. We know that's not true. So what I like about this team is they have proved all of these skeptics wrong.
And they've got the big win that has been really haunting this Arkansas football program the last couple of years. All these one-score losses. We kind of felt after Oklahoma State that they were going to get one. You know, they were either a team that's going to get got, which they have not yet, and there's not really many teams left on this schedule for them to get got, or they were going to get someone, and they got that big fish in Tennessee. Now you're sitting 4-2. It's looking like you're going to go to a bowl game at the end of the season. I'm not going to knock on, I don't know, wood somewhere. I don't know where there's wood, but now as we move forward the last 6 weeks, you got Ole Miss coming up, Texas, as well as Missouri, still 3 more ranked teams at least. What do you need to see Arkansas improve if they want to get a better bowl and be 8-4, maybe even 9-3 to finish the season?
Offensive line's got to get a little bit better, more consistent, better blocking, and then Taylor Green. He's got to be healthy, and he's got to, again, make quicker decisions. His decision-making is slow. He's fast, but his decision-making is slow.
So we'll see what happens. Should be a fun next couple of weeks. Arkansas and LSU kick off Saturday at 6 p.m. over on ESPN, another home game, and it is a red out, so make sure if you're going to be at that game, you are wearing red. But hey, PTN Extra, we're not going anywhere. Coming up after the break, we're talking some hoops. It's SEC Media Days this week. We'll break that all down next. Stick around. Welcome back into PTN Extra. I'm Evan Camigo. That's Mike Irwin. Mike, before we talk about the men's and women's basketball teams over at SEC Media Day, let's talk a little bit about what happened this week for Arkansas fans and in Arkansas lore. Rosario Richardson, the wife of former head coach Nolan Richardson, passed away earlier this week. She was 84 years old. Mike, you've been here a very long time. What do you remember when looking back at Nolan Richardson and the life and the legacy of Rosario?
You know, she was always behind the scenes. You'd see her at games, but she wasn't high profile. What she did was what a lot of fans didn't see, and that was what she did with these players. Nolan was tough on these guys. You couldn't play for him if you didn't have something inside of you because he pushed them and pushed them. And I used to watch him do that, and I would say, is he going to break one of these teams? Are they just going to collapse at some point? Well, the reason they didn't, I believe, is because she was very mindful of what was happening. So, for instance, they would have him over for dinner. And then what she would do is she would tell Nolan, hey, no basketball talk. We're just going to have fun here tonight. She took them from the toughness of what they were going through to a home environment and showed them, got them away from that a little bit. So I thought that was big. Davor Rimac, who I think he was from Serbia. I can't remember. That's been so long ago. But he was from Southern Europe, I think, somewhere. And he came in here as a college freshman. He knew how to speak the language, but he'd never been here before. He lived with Nolan for 2 years, and he said in one of his posts after this had happened, after Rose had passed away, she became my mom here. She taught me how things work in America. She drove me around to where, and got me to the point where I could drive myself, but she drove me around, she took me shopping, gave me tips on how to shop. She kind of showed me what you have to do to live in America. And he said, I'll never forget that. And he lived with him for 2 years, and then he was on his own for 2 years. She just did things like that. And this has been very difficult on Nolan. It was about a 15-year period where he became her caregiver. They had I don't think it was live-in, but they had a person that came in and helped too. But I was over there many times when you knew Rose was there, and you knew the caregiver was there. But you were dealing with him in interviews and things like that. But you knew when you left, he went back to dealing with that situation. And he couldn't go very many places because he didn't want to go off and leave her. So this has been very, very hard on him. But I mean, what he's done for his wife for the last 15 years is incredible too, showing what kind of husband he was.
Absolutely. I love that when you kind of pressed on your chest there, and it showed, to me at least, the heart and the soul of that early 90s Arkansas basketball run. Our thoughts and prayers, as always, go out to Nolan Richardson and the Richardson family as they deal with the death of Rose Richardson. All right, Mike, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about SEC Media Days. We'll start with the men's side of the team. Coach Cal, Edu Thiero, and John L. Davis all down in Birmingham for Media Days. What impressed you the most when you were listening to Cal speak?
Well, it started off, he got this typical question, why did you leave Kentucky? And his answer was great. He said, how many times do I have to answer this? I'm beyond that. We're beyond that. I want to talk about what's going on with this team right now. So the next question he got was, does it feel different to be here at Media Days as an Arkansas coach than a Kentucky coach? And he said, yes, it feels different. It feels different because usually when we've come in here, we've kind of had to promote the SEC basketball. He said, the league is so good now, we don't really have to do that. What we're really talking about here now is how good everybody is. And he said the challenge that we have is that we're going to be playing a good team almost every week in a terrifically difficult environment. And he talked about how he made this schedule in November and December tough because he said, I got a brand new team. I know what the pieces are like, but we're still trying to figure out what we're like together as a group. And you don't know that fully until you play. So we want to play some teams and figure out so that we can start evaluating ourselves before we go into SEC play. So I thought all of that was interesting. He talked about they've got 4 players hurt right now. He said, with this game against Kansas, this exhibition game against Kansas coming up, he said, I hope to get 2 back. So I guess 2 will still be out. So I think he wants Arkansas fans to know, I appreciate your support, but don't get too hyped up here because we're a completely new team that has to figure itself out, and it may take a while. He said, I would look more toward when we get into conference play and toward the end of conference play, then you'll know what we can really do. We may take some lumps early on.
And I'll be curious how long it takes for the culture really setting. Cal said in that presser that it usually takes a couple of years to settle in, but now when you look at the new way of building college basketball teams, of bringing in older guys, and now he's got some experienced guys as well who played under him at Kentucky coming over, one of them DJ Wagner, who we'll talk about in just a second. But there's a lot of new roster construction in the way he's able to build, and he's hoping that that culture now is able to set in a lot earlier, but mainly that new schedule point that you talked about. It's to know where they are. Nobody knows what this Arkansas team's going to look like. Last year, John Fanta of Fox Sports had Arkansas going to win his national championship. And what did they do? They slipped and fell, and now we all know what happens because history is history. But to you, Mike, when you see all of this, and also the point of there's 3 guys on this team whose dads played for Cal, what does that just show you about, the excitement level, I guess, of Arkansas this year? Obviously, it's high for everybody at home, but for even kind of us in the media, when you look at this team, it's a new season and a new year. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, right now is the honeymoon thing because he's making all the right moves. He's going all over the state. He's saying the right things. He really shows that he cares about the state. He's gone off and gotten involved in some charity things and gotten the team involved in that. All of that is good. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when they lose games, and I don't know how many they will lose, but if they go on a losing streak or if they're not exactly as good as people thought they were going to be, well, how did the fans react to that? I think they'll be patient. I think they understand that it may take some time. I mean, when he got here, he didn't have a team. You really need to think about that if you're a fan. What it's like to take a job and you have nobody on your roster. Now, one player did eventually come back, but you got one guy back from last year. You do have 3 or 4 guys, at least, that were at Kentucky that can tell the other guys what the culture was like there. That helps. If you have no one that's ever played under him, then nobody understands the culture, and they're all learning it together. So I think just having 3 or 4 guys that were there last year at Kentucky, that will help. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. I just know this is a lot of fun right now.
Absolutely, and like you said, we're in the honeymoon phase. We'll see what happens really quickly, and then we'll talk a little bit about the women. Who's the one player that you're most interested to watch over the next 10 or so days?
Yeah, Wagner, DJ Wagner, because he's very talented, but he was hurt. And Cal talked about all of the things he couldn't do. Before he got hurt, he said he was SEC Freshman of the Week 2 or 3 times. So he said now watching him now, he's not hurt and he's doing all those things that he did before. I think he's going to be a guy you really want to watch. And then Trevin Brazile, because he told that funny story about he admitted he didn't think Brazile was very good based on because he wasn't very good last year.
Right.
Things went bad for him. And he said he was stretching one day before practice, and he said, "You're better than I thought you were." And he said, "I told you." So I'm interested to see how he fits in with this bunch.
Yeah, the one thing I wrote down on my notes when it comes to DJ Wagner was getting his swag back. And I think fans will be really interested to see, so will we, how that looks on the court. Let's talk about the women really quickly. And Mike Neighbors spoke earlier today, along with Izzy Higginbottom and Christina Sanchez. This team is a lot different. They have 5 international players. They're now focusing more on the defensive side of the ball before offensive, which is definitely something new in the Mike Neighbors era. But they only have 9% of their total production returning. Let's cut to the chase, right? Last season was a massive disappointment for Arkansas women's basketball. They thought they had what it takes to get to the tournament. They fell. They lost 5 players who were really mainstays last year. One graduated in Michaela Daniels, and the rest off to the transfer portal to other SEC and Big Ten schools. Bottom line, what do you need to see out of the women's team this year for Mike Neighbors to save his job?
Well, I like what he's done in the offseason because he addressed the criticism, and the criticism was a lack of toughness. In other words, we're a 3-point shooting team, and if our shots are falling, we're going to win. If they're not, we're not very good. We don't want to go inside. We don't want to play defense, and people just got furious over that. So it looks like what he's done with this bunch is try to put together a team that is more defense, and then we'll see if that creates offense. But they still have to win. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely, and he talked about that international play style as they're very scheme-oriented. So only time will tell, Mike, whether or not that's going to translate to the college coaching, or especially the college level, where you see a lot of American stars and making their names around the country. Anything else, Mike, on SEC Media Days before we go?
It's a promotion thing, and I liked what Cal said. He said, "I almost didn't come, and I didn't want to come because he thought he had COVID, and if he had COVID, he wouldn't have to come." Tells you that he doesn't really like that too much because it's just a bunch of hype. I'm not big on SEC Media Days in football, basketball, or whatever because it's just talk, and I don't think you have to talk. We're close enough now to basketball season. It's about to happen. So, okay, they all got together and they talked, but you mentioned how Arkansas is going to do this or Arkansas is going to do that last year, and they fell on their face. I prefer to get the season underway and play basketball.
Absolutely, and the season is almost here. The women picked to finish 16 of 16, the men 4th out of 16. Time will tell if that actually comes true, but that's going to do it for PTN Extra today. For Mike Irwin, I'm Evan Kamiko saying so long, and we'll see you right back here next Wednesday.